beer again and say hi. But I figured to warm up for the Summer of Arcade talk. What I would do rather than the sales pitch is I would show some Fortnite video that has not been seen by the public. So turn your camera off. The recording devices of any kind. There's no video there, so I think we'll be okay. So what I'm going to show you, we did show this at Comic-Con, but it was to the panel. You had to attend the panel to see this. So Fortnite is a game we're doing at Epic Games in Raleigh. So this is part of the Gears team. It's our first Unreal Engine 4 title. So I'm sure most of you have seen the Elemental demo that we put out with Unreal Engine 4. This is the first real game that we're making with UE4. It'll ship sometime next year. We're kind of using it as a test bed to prove out the tech, to get it ready for our licensees to use. So I'm going to show you two videos. One of them is more of a promotional video, and then the other one's kind of to show off the environments. I'll talk over them a little bit just to give you an idea what you're looking at. One thing to note, everything you see is directly out of the engine. This is not pre-rendered. It's all captured in the engine. It's not done in Maya or anything like that. So without further ado, let's kick off Fortnite. All right, so now to the panel. First off, I want to let you guys know that IGDA Chicago has two events coming up. One is actually this weekend. It's a game jam at the Nerdery, right? For those of you unfamiliar with game jams, they're kind of like hackathons where people get together and make games together over a weekend. We have a second event coming up on October 24th. It's a talk with Heather Dr. Davis, who was actually checking everybody in outside. Heather, aside from being an awesome IGDA Chicago volunteer, is also an IGDA scholar. IGDA scholars give money to go to GDC. They're sent to GDC by the IGDA, and they cover a lot of costs and things like that. So that'll be on October 24th, right, Heather, at Flashpoint?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So, having said that, I'm going to introduce David Walensky, who's going to be moderating this panel. I'm going to read it right off of here. Dave is an internationally published writer, critic, and co-author of a book from the Onion's AV Club, the straight journalism side of one of the nation's biggest and most respected satiric publications. He's also part of the management editorial teams at NBC Chicago and Adult Swim, and has nabbed all these positions without taking a single journalism class. He's a music business from Middle Tennessee State. Yeah, it's good. He's also working on another book, writing a handful of scripts, and co-hosting the iTunes featured New and Noteworthy podcast, Snackerdoodle, about makeup junk foods. In between all that, he freelances for publications as lifelong as Wired and Maxim to Fund Your Diet and Topless Robot. So I'm going to introduce Dave, and then Dave's going to kick it off and introduce Josh and Dave.
Sweet, okay. I wasn't sure if he was talking about me or not. I'm up there. Dave Lang from Iron Galaxy is the CEO. It's a development house with studios in Chicago and Orlando. Dave started off in games as a self-taught programmer, making his first game in the 6th grade on Apple IIe. He kept on programming and making games as a hobby, until finally landing his first professional job.
I didn't think this was actually going to be Ren. I didn't think we're going to actually use these.
Yeah, I didn't think so either. But just too busy screwing people over on business deals to program. Entrepreneur, video game developer since the early 90s, starting from the Wild West arcade days to the latest. You want to read your own?
No.
No?
I didn't really. I think it's been really good for a while. Wrote in the drunken slate.
Let's say you're drunk on Sure. Okay. So I'm going to read the topic at least as is. Tonight we're going to be talking about digital distribution. In case you do not know, downloadable products are the future of the games industry, from the rise of platforms like Steam to console download services like Xbox Live Arcade, which we will call XBLA for the rest of the night, and PlayStation Network, PSN. The method by which we distribute games has changed dramatically in only a handful of years. Between July 18th and August 15th this summer, 5 lucky downloadable titles were included in an XBLA promotion called the Xbox Live Summer of Arcade. These games were Tony Hawk's Pro Skater HD, Racketeer, Dust, and Odyssey Tail. You can applaud for those. There's that. Deadlight and Hybrid. Out of those 5 games, 2 Iron Galaxy's Racketeer and Robomoto's Tony Hawk Pro Skater HD were made here in Chicago. The IGDA Chicago is going to go to the heads of those 2 Chicago studios for a night of thought and discussion.
One on two.
Who's going to be providing the discussion? We want to talk about just what you learned selling these games on XBLA.
How many of those games were on Unreal?
How many total were there?
5.
There's 4 of them.
It's a good discussion. So to start off, I mean, what is this shift in to digital downloading? How does that affect the industry in general?
Well, I think the first reason to understand why that's happening and why it's a big deal. It kind of matters almost as much as how it's affecting it. And so the big thing, there's things like internet being pervasive now, those things like that. But above beyond that, even 5-6 years ago, a lot more big what they call AAA games are getting made. These games with big budgets. You had to go to a brick and mortar store to buy, and a lot of those would have really big budgets, in excess of $20 million budgets associated with them. And those are slowly kind of falling by the wayside. There's fewer and fewer of those getting made every year. But people have all this money that they still spend, creating games that people like me and Josh to make games for them, and they still want to invest in space. They still want to get these games get made. But if they can't make a game that's going to support the $60 price tag at retail, maybe make smaller things. And smaller things, you can go through ways to distribute. You can't using the traditional publishing model, you can't make a $15 game and bring it to retail. There's no margin there. So you can find new innovative ways to kind of distribute. And through stuff like XBLA, PSN, Steam, myriad ways of PC to do it. That's kind of how all that goes out in the market.
Yeah, I think in general, the other thing kind of going off the idea of retail having very low margins. The $60 game in retail does pretty well. Because you talked about the manufacturing of this, packaging, the printing, and all this stuff. One of the things that digital distribution changed a lot is that you can suddenly get what is considered a AAA game, but in smaller in scope, and be able to get it out there and do pretty decent. A lot of times, if a game goes out on disc, starting at let's say $20, people in the consumer market, they go to a software market and they see something at $20, they just and sitting next to something at $60, they immediately think that they're dropping quality. Whereas being digitally distributed is not that stigma, and so you can see a lot more interesting experimental titles that look great, moving everything, on XBLA, PSN.
Do you feel like that stigma is something that's going to go away in time, or?
Well, I mean, there's always I don't know if it's going to go away. It's definitely changed. There's still a stigma of people needing to feel like they're getting value for their money. It's like on iOS how some people get mad about it and spend 99 cents for it. So I don't know if this price and quality stigma is going to go away, but I do think it's more of digital gives you a range of pricing strategies, all the way from free to play to which is becoming more and more pervasive, especially on PC, all the way up to expensive downloadable games are sometimes $15-20 now, and anywhere in between there you can set your price points, and that's stuff like Steam. And so it gives you as a game creator a lot more options on the scope of game you want to try to make and how ambitious you want to be. Versus in the old retail model, basically had you shovelware a tournament with some really small budget, hoping you make some money, hoping you get you find that Walmart customer, right, with your fishing game. Or you had to compete with other $60 titles, and consumers just got super savvy, and they're not going to pay $60 for Call of Duty, but then $60 for Racketeer, because they're just still, they're not the same value, right? And so that's one thing that digital has done. It's allowed for just a wider breadth of scope and quality, just kind of experimentation is allowed.
So where in the thought process of when you're coming up with a game do you decide this is the best approach to take distribution?
I mean, so in our case, specifically for Pro Skater HD, you know, when we're in original talks for it, there was supposed to be a retail game, but then what ends up happening is that we're in a particularly weird part of this console generation, and so if we were to come out with, let's say, a $40 or $50 game that was a remake of a classic game and it's been dressed up and been changed so it looks like a game from 2012, there's still a lot of questions on if it was going to sell well in retail, because anytime you have a retail box, first thing people do is flip the box around and look at the bullet points, what are the features in there, and and so when you're dealing with budgets and marketing, things like that, the amount of money that people want to spend on it, they could have spent it to go retail, but at the same time it was like, is it really worth risking this? Well, why don't we see if there are other options? And so the idea of going XBLA came up, and in many ways it kind of freed us up because if we had gone retail, we would have had to add another, let's say, 3 major features to make it, to make the game feel more full. And in the time and budget that we had, that we felt that the game, was going to make, was going to be successful, profitable, the return on investment wasn't going to be there, and just, we would have killed ourselves to try to get that out there. So it's kind of like when the XBLA route came out and the PSN route came out, we looked at it and said, all right, you know what, we can, this is a little bit more manageable. We don't have to put everything with the kitchen sink in there just to make marketing happy. We can stick to the core 5 features, let's say, that we want to do, and just keep the scope down. And so that really drove a lot of our direction on that. Like I said, at first it was kind of like, my ego was, a little hurt because it was, I just like seeing that box, at Target and stuff, things like that. But once I really thought about it, it's like, it doesn't make any sense for a game like this. Let's get it out digitally. If it does really well, then there are other options that we can do later on to bring it out to retail.
So you talked about like a hypothetical 3 extra features you would have had to have added to get a retail game. Are these types of features that would only be in a AAA game, or are these things? Are there features exclusive?
No, not really. You know what? It's literally there's a certain consumer mindset out there where it's like if once again it goes back to when people look at a game that's going to be downloaded digitally. They don't have much of a problem concentrating on core features of the game, whereas in retail, it's like people, first thing they do, they look at the table of contents, and the game next to it that's costing about the same has a longer list. It can be a problem.
It's basically if you do your PR launch, you announce your game's coming out, and if it's Tony Hawk or Racketeer, and they announce we're coming out, $40, $50 at retail or whatever. People go to Kotaku, they read the bullet points of stuff. The comments would be filled like $50 for this trash can be fucking great. So like the digital kind of shields you from that. You still get it, but you get it much later in the process. You can kind of control that a little more.
Yeah, no, that's totally good. It is a managing scope, really.
Yeah.
For us, we tend to only focus on downloadable stuff, and that's kind of a conscious business decision we made. We still do work on retail games, like we help Mike in the Jelly Vision Pro, as you know, Jack, those retail. And we do a lot of consulting, especially to like UE3 games that go retail. But when it comes to games that we kind of do lock, stock, or barrel, we only do downloadable. And the reason for that is just risk management from our standpoint. Pretty much everything we do at Iron Galaxy, we can kind of do stability-based for the company. And, I've been let go from 3 different video game companies that have gone tits up, right? And it's just super, super risky. If you've got a big game, if you want to play in that $60 retail space, you need at minimum 70 people. You probably need closer to 300, right? And those deals take, if not 6 months, maybe 18 months to shake out and get done, right? And so you're working on this one game, you've got this whole studio, like people that are counting on you for paychecks, and you're trying to come up, like, instead of finishing your game, you're worried about landing the next game, landing the next gig. And so what we ended up doing is like, listen, we're going to do deals with publishers that are all in like the, $1 to $3 million space. They're going to be much smaller games, so we're going to get them done a lot quicker. But if something goes wrong with one of them, it's like Capcom wakes up on the wrong side of the bed tomorrow, stubs their toe on Iron Galaxy swag, cancels some games, like we'll be fine, right? And if you bum, we'll be fine. And so we tend to focus on doing a lot of small deals at once. And it's just kind of a core business strategy, and downloadable size, scope, budget allows us to do that.
What sort of bed do you imagine Capcom sleeps on?
If you're a Capcom Japan,
I'm me.
if you're a Capcom Japan,
Yeah.
very extravagant,
Yeah.
you're probably 10 feet off the ground. Like you're probably a fireman pole to get down to the floor.
Yeah.
So yes, that's what I imagine.
Okay, so there's been a lot of talk about, we mentioned that we're in sort of a weird phase of the console life cycle, and there's been rumors and whatever that maybe some of the next consoles will be on the cloud only. How do you feel like that might change things both on the
Because I heard
business?
that question before. What do you mean like on the cloud? That could mean like a billion things.
How do you take it?
Oh, that's because the cloud is just a generic term for like data storage.
Yeah, well, I think when Jay and I came up with the question, what we meant was just...
No retail.
Yeah.
Just downloaded.
Okay. Well, I don't know anything about either of the consoles, so I can kind of talk freely. Basically, there's as a developer, like making games versus consumer. I don't think it makes a big difference as a developer if it was one way or the other. Like 9 times out of 10, the stuff we do is funded, and we're not the ones investing $2.5 million. We're not the ones worried about piracy. Piracy obviously affects us in terms of royalties and bonuses and that kind of stuff, but it's not like the backbone of our business strategy. And so, as a developer, I really don't care how you get my game, if it's on a disc or if it's downloaded. All I care about is that we can deliver an experience like that you're going to be happy with for the price you pay. And knowing, cloud allows us to do that better, and I'm all for it. As a consumer, obviously I think there's a whole bunch of, that's like different kettle of fish, There's a lot of things they could do with that that could be kind of abusive, but I think there's not enough information out there to kind of relay one way or the other about how it's all going to shake out. So,
How do you feel about it as a consumer?
well, I buy Steam games all the time, right? Like, I spend more on Steam games than I have XBLA and PSN or Xbox retail, PS3 retail combined. So, I might, as much as I might get like, oh, what if Steam goes away one day? All right, it doesn't sound like you buy a game. So, yeah, as much as I'd love to say I have a big theoretical problem with it, in practice I don't. It's like, bought a game today. Sleeping Dogs, yay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, there's a question about, the new consoles are going to not have this. As much as we like downloading games and things like that and how convenient they are, retail is still a massive part of it. It's huge. It's, you can't assume that everybody in the world has broadband access. In fact, I think I was reading some statistics, it's actually still not that widespread. And so, one of the things that come up about our game was, there was the option of possibly doing a retail version of the game down the road. And one of the first questions I asked was, well, why would you bother doing that? And the answer was basically because there's still a huge value in a person at Walmart walking by the shelf and seeing the game on there, especially seeing a name brand. You know what, I was pick this up. Especially if it's already been available as a downloadable. At that point, the money has been made for the game already, and now they're just basically going to try to get the rest of the audience that wasn't able to get access to it.
Instead of like bands nowadays, release stuff on vinyl.
Yeah.
Instead of for like purists.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just the, when I go to Target and I'm buying Doritos or something, I still go walking by the video game section, and most of my games I buy have downloadables, but every once in a while I'll see something and I'll pick it up that I just didn't notice before. So
Yeah, I think more and more it's just about reaching a different kind of consumer.
Yeah.
They probably buy a different kind of game. They probably don't buy as many games, but the money's still great, right? And if you can go get it, so much better.
I think what we're just seeing is there's a lot more experimenting on all ends.
Yeah.
Kickstarter is obviously something to talk about. Tell us about your experience with that.
It's funny. It's like in the last month, I've had more people ask me, for articles talking about Kickstarter, and which is amazing because we had a failed Kickstarter campaign, but I think we had inadvertently for those of you who don't know, it's like about a year, maybe a little more than a year ago, we did a Kickstarter campaign, and this was before Kickstarter became really Kickstarter, so before pre-Double Fine. So we got in kind of just
kind of naive about it, and just kind of, we'll just do a quick Kickstarter thing, see what happens. We had this prototype that was sitting around, we thought we might just do something with it. And the next thing I know, like websites start, picking up on it with all this publicity and stuff. And so that was kind of interesting. It went nowhere, but it was, and we have our own post-mortem on why it didn't go anywhere. But it was an interesting thing. Now seeing it later on, especially after the whole Double Fine thing, blowing up all over the place, it's like, why didn't we wait 6 months to do this instead? But it's an interesting thing. I think for games, I made a joke, I think on Twitter like a week or so ago, that every single project that I funded on Kickstarter, none of them have finished at all. And that's when the actor was, didn't you donate to Oregon Trail? It's like, and then I said, well, maybe I did. And I was like, back, like, no, I didn't. And that succeeded. So I so don't have me fund your Kickstarter because you'll get screwed.
That's the only thing you take away from today.
Not let that man back. So, in the spirit of experimenting, like companies that are trying this, do you feel like this frees up resources that could be spent elsewhere if they go exclusively that route?
Exclusively Kickstarter.
Sure, or digital distribution. Going back to that.
Yeah, I think if you can successfully do a Kickstarter, it obviously opens up possibilities that don't exist otherwise, right? That money comes without strings. There's still you have to manage that community, and you have to get them what you promised them, and you have to do all that stuff. But in terms of like IP ownership, hitting dates, just like milestone payments and all that, and stuff that normally you're encumbered by when you get money from an outside source, or getting a piece of your company or whatever it may be, those things don't exist. And so if you can kind of pull it off, it could be really, really cool. But I think what you're kind of finding out, I think what Josh found out, and what is kind of obvious now a year later, and why I don't think we'll ever try Kickstarter ourselves, is I think there's two kinds of people that can succeed at Kickstarter. There's kind of like the indies guys, like Octodad guys, or the many wear many hats guys. I was going to call that, excuse me. Guys kind of like young indie, that kind of like people just are desperate for them to succeed, right? They really they want to root for stories like that, and they have these quirky games that they can't get anywhere else. Like Activision's never going to make Octodad, they're not really going to do it. And so if you want that game, this is the only way you can get it. It's awesome. Well, I'm not saying that.
Tweet it.
And then there's that. And then there's the well-known people. Well-known people, making sequels of Wasteland or whatever, and that's the only way you're going to get a Wasteland sequel. And so I think those are the two. It's kind of like bifurcated to those two possibilities. And anyone in between, kind of, I think you really need to get lucky with some good PR and kind of make your own break there.
I really, it's that was one of the more interesting things that we found out with our Kickstarter thing was we were basically trying to kickstart a game that was nothing like any game that we had done before. And to us, we thought, maybe people will think it's kind of cool, we're doing something different. But our team was kind of known primarily for either the twin conquer or the fighting games, so they were coming out with this wacky Connect pinball type of thing. And so there was that disconnect, and people just, when they're going through these Kickstarter stories, they want to see a very specific thread, or a consistent theme through it. So, later on, we kind of joke now, it's like, if we had kickstarted, let's say, a skateboard game starring some other pro skater on the Xbox, things like that, people can connect those dots a little bit faster and easier, and that maybe that could have gotten funded. So that's something about the bigger things, we learned from it. In terms of freeing up resources, some kind of Kickstarter, frees up resources from that. You don't have to go out, begging money from people and not have to deal with publishers. So that's a good thing. The bad thing is that, and it's not necessarily bad thing, it's just bad if you're not disciplined, is that, throughout my entire career, I've always worked with publishers and such, and, one of the pros about it is that you get disciplined very quickly. There's a lot of checks and balances and stuff, and there's a benefit in having limitations put on it, because you're not just going hardball on every single idea that pops up in your head, because, every feature in the game costs money, and publishers, they're all about money, and so they're always going to be hammering down ground to make sure that your ideas are going to be good for the game. Whereas, with this Kickstarter with my mom funding me, suddenly that discipline isn't there. And a lot of times I think, products don't come out on Kickstarter on time because besides me, because of that,
None of the video games funded on Kickstarter have shipped yet. FTL is, huh?
I was getting around it, but it's just one.
Not yet. Not yet. So what about, Summer of Arcade? Like, what are some of the advantages and benefits of being on that?
If you're dead set on being on 360, you're willing to tolerate some form of exclusivity, be it 3 months before you can get on Steam or whatever. If you think your game is a good fit for the 360 audience, right? Or you're doing something like we did with Kinect where it's only on 360, there's no better place to be than Summer of Arcade, right? And there's a lot of talk about, Summer of Arcade numbers were low this year, they've diminished, and blah, blah, blah. Well, like that is probably all true. That doesn't change the fact that I would rather get Summer Arcade than not. So Summer Arcade it's kind of a big hassle. Like, there's a lot of things. Just even getting in is kind of a weird dog and pony show. And there's a billion people at Microsoft involved in the decision about who gets in and who doesn't, and why you're in and why you're not. And every day you're kind of like, jumping through one hoop just to get to jump through another hoop.
What are some of those hoops?
Like, just like having to pull together a demo for this group or a demo for this group, or just a special build with this thing unlocked because they want to show them the end game and it's not ready yet, middle stuff isn't ready yet. Just like, it's stuff that isn't hard. None of this stuff is like brain surgery, but it's stuff that detracts from you shipping your game or making it better.
This is still at a point where they can decide against including.
Yeah, I mean, like I'm sure when the Summer Arcade process starts, so it's the weird thing about the Summer Arcade process is it's not even the XBLA team that decides who's in. It's the Xbox platform team who decides who's in. And so, I'm sure they make a list of like, 20 games when we start. They kind of whittle it down through a series of meetings. And I guess maybe they got burned once because, I don't know, did you have any insight into how close you were to being in or out until you were absolutely in?
Not really.
Yes, neither did we. And so, all you know is you're still in the race. You don't know how many people you're running against. You don't know anything else. And it's really nerve-wracking because, like I said, if you're on 360, you want to be in there, regardless of the relative merits of the promotion or not. Right?
Yeah, it was. So the reason why we, or anybody would want to be in Summer Arcade is for placement on the dashboard. It's people complain about their apps not showing up on the App Store. The FUT interface. It's even worse on the Xbox where the real estate is very limited. So being able to get into Summer Arcade and have your game pop on the front page right when you first log in is amazing. You're just accessing millions and millions of people. So
it's not even just that. It's like the XBLA team. They count on you to promote your own game, right? And they don't do because they ship 150, 200 games a year. They can't put significant marketing efforts behind every single one of them, right? And Summer Arcade, these big promotions, these are the ones they do, right? And so, we were at the E3 keynote, that's the only reason we're at the E3 keynote is for part of Summer Arcade, We got all this exposure, we got I think 9 million people saw that. We're for good or bad reasons, I'll leave history to decide, we were trending on Twitter briefly during that keynote. And it's a goofy little Kinect game, and it's not something a lot of people, wake up and I can't wait to play this, or I can't dream this in their head, but yet it's getting all this attention and a lot of people are writing about it, and you never would have got that otherwise. That's why the dash placements, you get that impulse buy, is kind of the little marketing spend they can't afford to make, you get it.
Is it worth it?
For us, it's a different story for us because Microsoft paid for our game to get made, in terms of contract game. So I think you'd have to ask them if they thought it was worth it. It was an amazing experience. It was really, really cool because you got to do so much stuff you never would have done. Went to Comic-Con, went to E3, went to PAX, went to all these different shows, and got to show off the game and do all this stuff. And so, if nothing else, even if it wasn't this financial windfall with the studio or whatever, if nothing else, we learned about PR, we learned about marketing, we learned about how to promote your shit, And so, I'm glad, if nothing else, I'm glad Microsoft paid for that rather than us.
Something we haven't talked about is the Wii. and handhelds, which also have downloadable games. Do you have any sense or anything about what that process is like on those systems? Or?
Just anecdotal. I've never done anything myself for downloadable
Right.
for Wii or for handheld. Everything you've heard about like WiiWare Shop is that there's just so few success stories you can point to. And say, like, if we can be like that, we can make money. I think there's World of Goo. It's probably the best example. There's outside of that, there's not a whole lot of great examples. And that's gonna. If you have the choice then of going to PSN or going to 360 or going to Wii, I don't think it's selling quickly in two horse race.
I just don't spend a lot of that.
And so not a lot of first-hand evidence there, but just in terms of like how hard it is or whatever, it's just you don't consider it because we don't expect a good enough return.
Yeah, for us, even on the first two hot games, even though they were we made the engine in-house, we didn't make it Wii compatible, and as far as I know, there's no Unreal for the Wii, so it just wasn't really an option. Sorry, Joe. But in terms of mobile, we did do a mobile game, and using Unreal on there, and the process that was probably the easiest process that we have, which is submission of nothing, because Apple doesn't care what the hell goes on their apps. That makes it easy. For those of you who've never done a console game, the requirements for console games, especially on the QA end of things, are nuts. So be happy that you've never done a console game.
So with digital distribution, what do you need to approach the customer experience differently in terms of how you interact with them?
Well, for us, I found that digital is the only chance we actually get to approach the customer. When we were worked on, you were in Midway or whatever, if you're working on a big retail game, the investment level is typically much higher, and the publisher, they're like, we'll do PR, you guys are idiots, you'll fuck it up. Right? We'll do it, you guys, or whatever it is, right? And then when it comes to digital, the budgets are so much smaller, there's probably not a marketing budget to speak of. And if you want to do it, they're like, it's very different. All of a sudden they're like, you guys want to do that? That's amazing, go do it, or whatever, right? And so, it's not so much that it changed our approach so much as it we had to come up with one for the first time. And that's definitely a learning experience. Like anyone who, I remember when, before I entered Galaxy, I worked at a bunch of different game developers and publishers, and I was a programmer. I'd sit in my office, and I think everyone else in the company was an idiot. And those business guys, they don't do anything all day, or the HR people, or the marketing guys, they don't do shit. This is a crime. They sliver this money. This is bullshit. And now that I kind of do my own thing and I kind of see all of it, all that stuff's really freaking hard too. And that's one time I chose not to swear for some reason. If you think you're just going to kind of get on Twitter one day, do a post and get 500 retweets or whatever, and you got another thing coming. It's like anything else. You got to work at it. You got to work at it every single day, and you got to find your voice and be authentic. And it's remarkably much easier to say than it is to do it.
Was there a part of that process you found yourself surprised at how much you liked?
So I'd say the most experience we have with it is with Third Strike Online Edition from Capcom. That is a very beloved game by the fan base. And the game got received really well. I think it's like Metacritic, it's like an 86 or something like that. So we got really good reviews, but there's a handful of issues that people have with the game community. And just loud and vocal about it. Someone posted it, I don't know if people are in the
They're probably not with the swear words.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like Shiroken.com is like the world's, it's a kind of lead on that world, but certainly North American. It's the biggest fighting game community website. And someone was kind enough to post my email in a thread. And people found several new individual ways to tell me to fuck off. And what was awesome is I responded to every single email and tell people why it was the way it is, or
You tried each one.
I replied to every single one. It's like, here you go, blah, blah. And then eventually started putting people over. Because they think you're in it for the right reasons, they think you care. In this case, we do, so it's really easy. And that's probably the most satisfying moment of all that stuff, is just kind of realizing that you don't have to just be a punching bag if you engage with, even the trolliest of the trolls, if you engage with them, you can win someone over, and that's super satisfying.
Yeah, I think your marketing point is dead on. It's that when the budget's low, you get a lot more leeway, especially if you like doing a little bit of the marketing stuff, getting exposure for the game. Once Akira Sonoda always had this thing of, always be aware that the marketing department's really lazy. So the more work you do for them, the happier they are. You just gotta make them feel like that they did the work. You don't want to patronize them or anything. But there's one of those things where it's like, you know what, go make the screenshots, go make the videos, get control, what goes out there. And if you do have a marketing department you're working with, give it to them, and they're more than happy to distribute it all over the place. For the hot game, we did all of our screenshots, we did all of our videos, including the teaser video at the VGAs and the launch video right before the game, stuff like that. We did that all completely in-house. And we're lucky in that the PR marketing agency that we're using, they saw the first video that we did and they trusted us that we can do it right. And so we just kind of took the bull by the horns and just took it out there. And we always made sure we went through that we weren't inadvertently putting something out there offensive. That's where your point about, hey, these suits that work at these game companies, well, why the hell are they here and things like that. They actually do know a lot of stuff, and there's been more than a few times where I was sure something was oh, this is rock solid, this is really smart, and then I'll send it to them, and they'll point out like, yeah, you just offended half the human race with this little thing graphic down the bottom, which we didn't even realize.
You can't please everybody.
You can't please everybody. So yeah, you have to respect the quote unquote suits out there because they got there for a reason and they probably know things that you don't know.
Yeah, I think in general this is kind of falling to that point. It's nothing to do with what you asked about.
Great.
I do think in general, publishers get pretty much an unfair knock for like meddling and just kind of like getting in there, ruining your creative vision and all this. Like, are there people that do that? Sure. Are there publishers that suck or exploitive? Sure. But in our experience, we've been incredibly lucky, or it's just more the norm than not. We've had producers, biz dev people, they've been really supportive of what we want to do. They back us up, and they give us the kind of room to run. Now, will they pull us in from time to time if they think we've gone too far in one direction? Sure, but you take a step back, I think 9 times out of 10 they're right to do so. And so, it's easy for people to sit there and bang on publishers and bang on this or whatever, but for what it's worth, in our experience, I think most of them have been great to work with.
I'm sure nobody's there thinking that they're the idiot.
Yeah.
After all.
Yeah.
So what about file size? I mean, we sort of touched on this before. Not everyone has the blazing fast internet. Is there such a thing as going too far these games?
I think the only time I ever consider file size is for doing mobile. We want games downloadable over 3G, and that really kind of changes every year or whatever. But that's really the only time we factor it in. Aside from that, Microsoft's got a hard 2 gig file limit because it's broke NDA. Saber post on its Twitters.
NDA names?
So that's you can do. Hopefully, you can figure out a way to fit your game with 2 gigs, for Pete's sake. And so it's not a huge practice consideration aside from mobile for us.
Yeah, we're pretty sensitive about the file size. It's interesting because Sony just started doing day 1 downloadable for games.
That's awesome.
So it's gonna be interesting to see how that goes. But for us, a good example on our last game, a lot of the hot games are known for having skate videos, on the disc. And so we were asked, well, you're not going to put skate videos on this? Like, no, because do you really want to, you want to download 2 gigs when only maybe 400 megs of it is the actual game, the rest are all videos?
But do you think that anyone in that situation, they would have got to the buy button? They'd been like, oh, 2 gigs.
No, I don't, if somebody wants to buy the game, I don't think file size is going to be an issue. At least not on console. I think on phone it is, because I've already ran into an issue with a game recently that I can download because I was out of space on my phone. But on console, I think if somebody really wants a game, they're going to pay the $15, $10, whatever dollars for it. Yeah, they might get mad when they realize they don't have any of this space, and then that might stop them from buying it. But they already bought it. But in terms of file size, I think the other things on the development end of things, it makes you more conscious about what fluff you want to put in there. Just like, hey, do you really want to put this giant cinematic in there that's bigger than the actual game itself? Just go from there.
The other end of the whole file size thing is something that's flared up as DLC that you get that just unlocks stuff that's already on the disk. I think that's a time when small files really piss people off. I don't know if you've seen that, or yeah, what's your opinion on that?
Well, I mean, obviously, that's, you don't want to make any blank statements, because given, it's free to play, maybe that's okay, right? But if it's something you pay $60 for, and then there's another $60 in DLC that's actually on the disc, I think everyone would agree that's probably crossing the line. But I think the most obvious example, like, even then it's still kind of like, not exactly cut and dry. Like, if you look at Street Fighter Cross Tekken, it's probably like a notable example of Capcom getting bad, like, really taking the task for this. I think that's a really good example of when DLC on a disc makes sense. Because, like, if you're a fighting game, and you push new characters out, well, everyone, if you want to fight against someone that has that, like, then for online, you basically bifurcate the experience, right? You say, if I don't have the DLC, I can only matchmake against people who don't have it, or I have to come up with some unique, crazy thing to do there. Whereas if everyone's got it on the disc, but maybe they still don't have access to it, I think in that particular instance, maybe on this DLC makes sense, because then, at the end of the day, it's a better user experience for everybody, And it's not like that game is short on characters, so I don't think there's an easy answer. I mean, I think if there's a line that everyone knows it when they cross it, but even some of the like quote obvious like abuses, like Street Fighter Cross Tekken, I'm glad they did it because I think it's a better user experience all in all.
Actually, that's good. I don't have an opinion either way. Just to me, it's
Well, it's a consumer, maybe.
Yeah, well, the thing is that for me, it's
impossible to separate yourself from that, though. It's not possible. Like, you can't, because we've been in too many email threads when it's like, we launched DLC like 2 months after the game ships, but like, those fuckers just cut that content and push the DLC. Well, no, it's not that. It's that, the last 4 months of the game, it was just the programmers. And the content guys were sitting there doing nothing. So it's like, okay, start making new levels, And having been on that side of it, it's kind of like impossible to like say, it's what you always think of whenever you hear someone cry foul with this. It's like, you don't know the situation in which that was made on so you kind of been on the other side of it. So it's hard for me to separate myself and say it's consumer, I think. But, like you download a 100K file and you have 5 hours of content, it's probably a problem. The one example we used. Sorry. No, it's fine.
And another way to look at this is, do you feel like, since this has become so mainstream, that it's affected console games at all, the way that they're approached?
on a DLC or
just digital distribution, not DLC specifically.
Man, I mean, outside of what I mentioned earlier, you also mentioned is just I think you're going to get a lot more variety of console games because of digital distribution. Because now you don't have to deal with trying to fight for shelf space in the retail store. So I think there's a big AAA game like Call of Duty and things like that. They're all going to still be out there and stuff. But if there wasn't downloadable games, and we're going through this period right now, I think we're going to get a lot less variety of games on the retail shelves, because it's really just the big games that are going to be making a shit ton of money, and it's going to show more. So yeah, I think it's a great outlet for very good, creative AAA teams to make games, still make games, and make money off the game, and not have to jump through a million hoops to try to get it on some sort of.
There's this stuff like the Sony Day One digital stuff. Has everyone heard about the Day One digital stuff Sony announced, I think it was yesterday? So for those who don't know about it, they say this is amazing. I don't know how they pulled this off. So now if you're a PlayStation Plus subscriber, which is kind of a financial no-brainer in its current form, it's a great value. There's a handful of games you can pre-order now, and you get them day one. It's not like they go digital like a month later or whatever, and you get like a 10% price break on it. So if you're into Desire or Need for Speed Most Wanted or whatever, if you go to PSN now, pre-order it for $53, when on retail it's going to be $60. You buy from Amazon, maybe you get it for $58, whatever. And it's digital. And so it's like, I think like all the games, like XBLA, PSN games, like this has been the first wave of digital on consoles. And now people, if they're willing to kind of like stick it to retail with this kind of stuff, I think we're going to see even more experiments, even more kind of cool stuff that's pro-consumer. And I'm super excited to see how this Day One digital thing will go. Really good.
Are there any other developments or changes like that you'd like to see? Just across the board?
I do wish everyone's got their own theories on why, PSN and XBLA numbers are going down. My personal theory, this isn't backed up by a lot of research, but my personal theory is that just when a console's new and there's only 10 games in XBLA store shelf or PSN store shelf, people just find it easier. There's more of an impulse buy kind of thing. The dash isn't as crowded. And now that it's like, it's been, 2005 when 360 launched, so it's coming up on 7 years here. It's just, there's so much content there, and there's trailers, and there's videos, and there's movies, and there's music, and there's all this stuff. So discoverability, the stuff that people always cry about on the App Store, and not cry about, it's wrong, but people always rightfully point out is a huge problem in that ecosystem. That's what I think it is for digital on console, is that it's hard to find games. If you don't know a game exists and you already don't want it, good luck, And I think that's one of the things, like when we see these theoretical next-gen consoles, oh my God, digital's back, it's awesome, it's back to it. No, it's just because of this, it's because people need to buy games. They don't have a library of 400 games already they normally play. They've got one game when they've got $15 in their pocket. They'll buy something digital. I think it's just going to be, we'll find that these digital kind of peaks and valleys are cyclical with the consoles. You don't see it on Steam. Steam is Steam. Steam is Steam.
Steam is Steam. What is Steam not?
So was something to what's the question?
I guess sort of wishful thinking about the way this form of distribution change or evolve.
Anytime I try to predict something, I'm always wrong.
I'm just predicting stuff that you hope might happen.
Yeah, I think everybody who's doing downloadable games, you want to, crack the nut on this stuff. Like what you say, it's on the Xbox dashboard, it's so cluttered now. Games are not even secondary, it's way downloaded this on things. So trying to find it is difficult. I know that there's been a lot of various solutions to it. I think one of the really cool things is the Xbox Live app on the phone and even the Steam app. So wherever you are, you can look for games and stuff and have it ready to go to get back. So I think that's something that's really good. Discoverability is always on our minds. Because you want to make a game and you get it out there, and like you said, you can't just think, oh, I have 500 Twitter followers, every single one is going to buy the game, and and others. This is not going to happen. So trying to figure out, everyone in the game industry in general is just trying to figure out, if we put a game out there and it's downloadable, how are people going to find it?
It's going to suck when we figure out it's just fundamentally not fixable.
And that's the thing. It's there's so many different theories.
When is that going to happen?
Yeah, I think that maybe just now.
Yeah. Well, on that dismal note, I'd like to open it up to you guys for Q&A. I guess I saw Jared's hand in the back.
So you were saying when Steam is not Steam?
When is Steam not Steam?
When it's in a liquid state?
What's that?
Also, you were just talking about discoverability and everything. I'm really interested to see what you think is going to happen when possibly the United States opens up legal gambling online, and how that's actually going to change the whole state of gaming again. I see it as a tidal wave coming in, where there's what if the Xbox has casino games on it, and
yeah, I actually haven't given that a single thought. I've heard those stories, but I've actually never really considered
I can't sleep at night because of it.
You don't sleep. It's still the thing. All that's going to happen. I mean, just as my gut.
I just immediately went to people being down a hand in poker and pulling their Ethernet jack out. Sorry, go ahead.
If you're talking about in terms of discoverability, it's still going to be the same issue. You can have a million gambling games out there, and it's maybe I don't know. It'd be interesting to talk to people who work at WMS to find out, why does one type of slot machine attract more than some others? And there might be no answer to that.
I wish they knew.
Yeah. To day one, there might be no answer, which would be really scary.
Yeah.
What are the downsides to being in the summer of arcade, if any?
I think the kind of exclusivity, I think that's, from just a game maker, that's clearly a downside. I get why it's there. I get, Microsoft is putting all this money into promoting it, and they don't want Sony or someone else to benefit from that. So I get it, but it's clearly bubbling. And then secondly, just like we both talked about, just the absolute hassle of, all you want to do is make your game. Like, at that point, the end's in sight. You've got a good game, you're proud of it, it's fun. You just want every single moment to polish off the rough edges and to make it as good as it can possibly be, right? And so then when you get that email, 6 p.m. at night, hey, marketing in Korea, they need a build with just this level because they want to ship it off to these guys. No problem, right? It's like, no problem. And so then you end up diverting some of your precious time into doing that, right? And when these things happen every single day, it's a real problem. It distracts from how good the game can be, And it's, like I said, it's a good problem to have. I'm not complaining about it. But that's the one thing that drove me kind of nuts.
Yeah, the same thing. It's just that like I said, the sheer amount of bills that go out, and the requests are coming from marketing. So it's not like, it's not like somebody asked me something and you understand why you may not be able to do it. They just like, hey, we just do the data. And then the exclusivity thing. In our case, the rabid Sony fanboys was very tiring to have to listen to. So we were really happy when the Sony version finally came out and got that off our backs.
As far as you mentioned this, do you think pre-ordering digital needs to come? I think that's one of the things
that I should have answered that question.
You should have.
We had talked about that.
Josh, what do you wish?
So and I know on Steam you can do that. So
yeah. So actually, you could do that. We did that with Third Strike on PSN. If you pre-order, it was part of their. PSN has some promotion. It's god awful name, whatever it is. And we were the lead title on that last year. And you could pre-order it, and if you did it, you got like this theme and all this other stuff. And because of that, I guess I can't even say that. We had really good PS3 numbers, better than we expected. And everyone attributes it to that. And why that is, he didn't flip that switch for every single game. After that, I have no freaking clue. But they have the capacity to do it on PS3. And it was really good for us. Anecdotally, we believe that.
So it's so hard. You search for something, you can't find it, and people forget about it.
Well, that's the thing is that, I had asked that question back when I was looking for some games on the App Store. And a lot of times, you'll read an article about a developer making a game or just some game that's work in progress. And I would just, here's $1 million idea if someone wants to steal it. Is somebody just made, something where if there's an article about a game, somewhere on there, there's a button that just, you know what, this game is going to come out in 4 months, they're finishing it up. I want something to hit that'll let me just automatically buy it as soon as it's available, because in that 4 months, there's so much crap coming out that you end up forgetting about it, and then good luck finding it on the App Store again. But there's so many gaming sites out there that talk about games that are work in progress, that sound interesting, gets people hyped up, and the 4 months passes by and it just kind of fizzles out from there. So yeah, it's like when the VGAs happened last year, and we put the teaser video up there, man, if there was like pre-orders for that thing, that would have been stellar.
Hi, I just wanted to reassure, this isn't so much a question, I wanted to reassure Dave that there is a solution. If you read the long tail,
sorry.
By so basically, one of the lessons of that is the solution to discoverability is recommendation engines, and services that have good recommendation engines and prominent recommendation engines don't have a discovery problem, like Netflix, for example.
Are you a plant from Bing?
Netflix is fundamentally a different proposition, though. So Netflix, you're not buying individual things. Netflix, you're not trying to buy each movie. Netflix, you already spent your money.
So like Rhapsody also is an example of Amazon.
Bing.
I guess it's Bing right here. Xbox, Bing, find a cool game.
Lane zone.
I just think I don't consider that. I mean, Amazon's like, I use Amazon and I do occasionally click on things that my friends bought or whatever. But I don't think that's the same as solved. Like when you've got I don't know, does anyone know how many apps are on the iOS store right now?
Like 4.
like 10 billion maybe. And tomorrow there'll be 20 billion. And there's, you know, it's like, I think this problem is going to get worse, not better, which is kind of why I was like, I'm looking forward to like a reboot. When it's like, okay, it's what now? There's nothing in the stores. It's like freaking Gold Rush again, you know?
I know that there was something that came out today that they said that, I'm not sure, but most people, when they buy an app, it's through word of mouth. And they actually broke it down, you know, some of them were from, you know, reading websites, some of them this and that, but a lot of it is just, you know, my Facebook buddy or my guy following Twitter happened to talk about it. I'll go check it out.
We'll read it.
Yeah, you should. Yeah, I wrote an article about this at my for Kama Sutra, for my Kama Sutra blog, about this exact thing,
Okay.
solving that problem.
Ding it.
Xbox, big discoverability. Nothing.
What do people think about like the level of curation from all these platforms? Because like you're on PSN or XBLA and you have to jump through all these hoops and all these payments, and sometimes if you do, you know, a certain amount of updates or whatever, it ends up starting to cost money, or maybe you have a specific deal with your publisher or whatever. Whereas on like Steam, you can update whatever you want, and they just open it up to where there's actually no barrier anymore. You can update
Once you get in.
once you get in, right. You can update just kind of whenever. They don't even have to look at it. It's kind of they're just kind of like, well, it's up to you. Figure it out.
Whenever I see people, like, I guess presumably we're talking about Polytron stuff, and that's one example is, whenever I read about stuff like that, I just always in my head goes, oh, they signed a bad deal.
Yeah.
You know, and like, this is going to sound probably too harsh, but like, if you're in the business of making console games and you're trying to sell, you're trying to compete with like the best there is in XBLA and PSN, $15,000 to patch a game, that shouldn't stop you. Like, that is not a lot of money in that realm, right? And if you're not prepared to spend that,
It was 40. I think the number was $40,000.
There was a lot of stuff around.
It wasn't just 15. But
okay, I will just say,
There's a lot of story behind that.
so regardless of that, I don't think, like, even if it's 40, like, you need to be prepared to spend that money when you enter that space. And if you didn't work it out when your publisher's going to pick it up or whatever it is, then I think that's on you. These rules are known when you get in, when you do a deal with XBLA or PSN, you know the rules when you start. And then they kind of cry about it when it goes south for you. And that really that whole thing shows me wrong. That being said, is it fair? Is it smart? I think it's dumb, right? I think that's why everyone's going to Steam. That's why everyone's doing all this stuff. Because if you've got the choice, and Steam moves as many units or more in some cases, in a lot of cases, as XBLA or PSN, why go through all those hassles, right? And so I think it's super smart of those guys to kind of get away from that stuff. In general, I think playing PS3 is even better about it than Xbox guys. But it's still, yeah, I wish, I don't know how they can't look at Steam and say, this is working for them. Like, why do we think this is a huge problem that's working for these guys?
I guess I was more so asking about the discoverability aspect related to that, because like, say Greenlight, they can only greenlight about 30 games a quarter. And a lot of people complain about that, and they're like, oh, well, but I'm really close to the top of the list, and if you just did the top 50 or whatever instead of the top 10 every month, you'd be able to get a game out faster and stuff like that. And then again, they put out 50 games every quarter instead of 30 from that small pool, and it's really hard to decide, you know, I want this game on these 50 instead of this game on these 10 or 30.
And there's going to be some number that is going to make someone mad no matter what. And I think it's smart for them to start off small, because they can always grow it. If they started off at 100 and then shrunk to 50, that would be a much riskier PR proposition for them. Starting off at 10 and deciding to grow it later. So I'm guessing it was them. They tend to zero in on the right answer, and I think that's probably what they were thinking. I absolutely know it.
It seems like I was talking to them and they just said that they're basically just kind of going with it, and they've already made like a huge amount of changes just in 2 weeks' time.
As I say, I mean, it's, I know like they came out with one set of rules, but they changed about this. I think they're just, it's new to them. They're just trying to figure it out as they go along. I'm sure all kinds of unexpected stuff popped up.
In general, I think Greenlight is kind of bogus. Like, not insofar as like it's bad for indie devs, but I think it's kind of bullshit Steam. Like, they want to have their cake and eat it too, right? They want to be able to make all this money. They want to be able to make their N% off of every game they sell and not do any of the work. They have to go discover what cool games and devs are out there, right? And I think it's horseshit because like I can't say it's not going to achieve their goal because it will, but they're so damn smart.
So you guys really seem to be excited about the discoverability that retail provides you. So tell me, aside from discoverability, what are you guys going to miss once every GameStop burns to the ground in 10 years?
Well, I don't think every GameStop's going to burn to the ground anytime soon.
What are you planning?
But at the same time, I hate going to GameStop. I went to one for the first time in like 5 years, about a week ago, and it reminded me why I hate going into those stores.
Hey buddy, you want to pre-order Call of Duty?
Exactly.
Midnight Launch Pro.
But what would I miss from retail? Yeah, I think it's, and it just might be me being old-fashioned, is that there's nothing cooler than going to a store and seeing your product on the shelves. I don't think anything will ever replace that. That's why a lot of book authors, they would still rather have a book on the shelf in hardcover and not make any money than to do a Kindle book first. There's just a certain procedure. It's like, having vinyl at the record shop. So I think that's going to be missed. But in general, people still go to brick and mortar stores, and people enjoy walking around. They want to get out of their living room and see things. And so there's got to be a certain number of product out there. Even if they don't buy it and they buy it later on Amazon or whatever, people walk around, they're in the 3D space, they see things that they normally wouldn't see, and and what they buy there later on, the people that made the game will still make money off of it. So I think it's way too premature to say that a place like GameStop will disappear, because if they have smart people, and that's something that they do. But they have smart people.
They're all burning down.
They'll figure out another way to last. Maybe not, but that's just me being optimistic about it.
We have time for one more. Since you went, Clayton.
I guess what I want to ask is, how do you see well, from a consumer standpoint, when I used to be in the past, when I wanted to play games, I'd have to go to the store, buy a game. Now I find that a lot of times when I want to be entertained or escape for a little bit, I'll just reach into my pocket, grab my smartphone. It's real cheap to get on there and get something to play with, and that time that I would spend in the past on a console game, a lot of times I find myself just getting on the phone, downloading something, checking something out, and then getting back to whatever work I have to do and going on with my life. And I found that I am not going and pursuing console games like I used to in the past. How big of an impact do you see the smartphone having on the console market in general? This simple fact that
I think it's already had an impact, but it's once again it goes to like the GameStop and Apple. There's going to be another round of consoles out there. There's going to be a percentage of the population that will buy consoles, whether it's just for pure gaming or just as entertainment stuff in general. The thing is that it's the difference between watching home video and going to the movie theater. For big AAA games that are just going to look incredible using the Unreal 4 engine stuff, it's going to be an amazing experience that you want. That you're going to want to. I always call it it's appointment gaming. You're sitting on the couch, you're going to spend the time to get engrossed in a game. That's always going to be there. Mobile games, tablet games, especially phone games on your smartphone. That's more convenience gaming. I'm on the train. I have 5 minutes to spare. I'm going to play this, that, or the other thing. But it's kind of like reading a book on my iPhone. It's like I'll have notifications popping up. I'm constantly being interrupted. So it's the format dictates what kind of games you're going to end up playing.
Yeah, I think in general the way it's impacted forever console stuff is how people measure return on investment. People now are just less willing to spend money for games, and because there's so many great free. Let's see, I can go pay $60 for Call of Duty or Dishonored or whatever it is, or I can just fire Hero Academy on my iPad on the couch and play against one of my 5 friends that has it for free. It's that's a really, really compelling proposition for a lot of people. And there'll always be room for those games that, the big experiences with people. The stuff that Madden, people are always going to get mad or whatever, right? But I think that's the way it's impacted everything. It's there's so many free ways that people can play games now And it's largely due to proliferation of the phones and all that stuff. But people are just less willing to spend money.
All right, I guess that's all we have time for. Jay, is there anything else you want to add from back there?
No, thanks everybody for coming out.
Thanks, guys.
Now we're just hanging out.
You know what, guys?